Doncaster Rovers are one of the most refreshing case studies for me of the 23-24 EFL season, because it feels like we're in an era in football now where there's a lot of criticism levelled at managers. There's a lot of impatience among fans. The time frame from which fans demand instant results is getting shorter and shorter, and some of the judgments are becoming more and more ruthless, it feels like at times. So what's been really refreshing for me is to see Doncaster Rovers fans stick with Grant McCann and sing his name all the way through last season, and they were rewarded because they first of all they could see the bigger picture, that although results weren't everything for parts of that season, they were absolutely decimated by injuries, especially in the first half of the campaign. And then through some good January business, the fans had their rewards, because from March onwards, Doncaster had this historic run from 20th in March to finishing 5th and getting into the playoffs. Now, they fell short in the playoffs, losing in the semi-final to Crewe through that second leg defeat after a 3-0 first leg advantage. But I think there's a lot of optimism for Doncaster Rovers to take into next campaign, and they'll be starting it as one of the promotion favourites. Can they live up to that billing? Well, that's what we're about to find out in this Summer Deep Dive, the second of a new series of Summer Deep Dives across the EFL on EFL Debate. So I'm delighted to be joined by Daniel Pearson from 18Dapper. Daniel, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. Just reflect for me on last season and that, I guess, that really dramatic and perhaps unexpected run over the last couple of months.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on again, Gabe. I really appreciate it. I think you summed it up really well in the intro. It was, I think, if we'd have not had the couple of seasons prior to the season that we had this season, or the one just gone, I think we'd probably be having a different conversation in terms of Grant McCann lasting the whole season.
Sure.
I think the fans had seen poor performances and no fight, no desire, no grit, no determination from the Danny Schofield team. Elements of it in Gary McSheffrey's team, but I think he probably had a plan B, whereas Danny didn't when he was in charge. I think what the fans were screaming for and hoping for and wishing for was an experienced manager, somebody who they know can change tactics in a game, change shape, change approach. And we got Grant McCann in the summer, and it just kind of galvanised the club and the city. And there was a bit of optimism going into the season. Obviously, that was short-lived with, I think it was 1 point in 7 or 2 points in his first 7 games. It wasn't a great start. But we were seeing good performances. We were seeing kind of the green shoots of recovery from a couple of poor seasons. So I think because of that and the way that we were playing, I think there was a little bit of leniency with the fans towards Grant McCann. And like you say, everybody just sang his name all the way through the season. And it was nice to be rewarded with that, with the fantastic end to the season, to the season that we saw.
Yeah, I really do find that really heartwarming in a way, that fans were able to see that bigger picture. So it certainly takes an educated bunch, I think, to be able to do that. In terms of this season,
very generous for Doncaster fans.
Absolutely. I think what's important to recognise, though, is the impact of the loans. 3 of them in particular in January: Timothy Lotala, Haki Badelican, and
Matty Craig.
Mike Craig, thank you. So those are the 3 ones that are going to be really important to replace in terms of this summer window.
Yeah, exactly that. I think the 2 goalkeepers we've got in Lewis Jones and Ian Lawler are okay. The good keepers on the day, but I think what we've struggled with as a club for some time now is having that number one who you know is the number one, and there's always a backup to that person. We've kind of been to and throwing with loanees all the time, and there's just been a bit of instability in that back line over the last couple of seasons. And when Lotala came in, I think he was averaged about 2 points a game in the games that he played towards the end of the season. And I think he was helped with a back four that was consistent, which we'd not had for a long period of the season. But I think your back four is only as good as the keeper organising them behind them as well. And I think once that goalkeeper kind of gives you that security and that calmness, I think everything else starts to fall into place. And Timmy is one of those keepers that I think will do very, very well in his career. Heard rumours that if we'd have progressed through the playoffs and we were talking about a League One team next season rather than League Two, Timmy would have been coming back for potentially another loan, if not signing on permanently. But football is what it is, isn't it? And we're still in League Two, so Timmy's looking elsewhere, and it's a shame. But I do think we've got two half-decent keepers that we've got at the minute, but I do think that'll be an area where Grant McCann will be looking to improve this season and get somebody who's definitely the number one and who is as calm and composed as what Timmy was. You say about Matty Craig, he's a fantastic player, and he reminded me so much of Herbie Kane, the loanee that Grant McCann brought in his previous tenure at Doncaster. He just got better and better with every game. A 19-year-old with a 23, 24-year-old head on his shoulders is just unreal, and you can see why he's so highly rated at Tottenham, and he's going to be so tough to replace. He controlled the midfield. A lot of the play went through him, and like I say, every game that went by, more minutes he got under his belt, the better he got. And I'll be very surprised not to see him in League One next season on a loan and progressing in his development. So yeah, good luck to him. And then obviously Adel Aiken, I think not only did he provide us with excitement, he got us off his seats, goals, assists. I think him being there scared a lot of defences, which also opened up spaces for Molineux. And I think we saw the best out of Luke towards the end of the last season. Scoring 11, assisting 10, Luke Molineux, which the previous 18 months at Doncaster have not been great. So I think it needs somebody with that energy and that ability on the other side to kind of open pockets for Luke to exploit as well. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Three positions that are going to be very tough to fill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose I'm really curious to wonder what Grant McCann's thinking will be when it comes to replacing those three players, Daniel, because we've seen Doncaster in previous years get caught out by being so reliant on the loan system and then not having anything to fall back on after a few seasons, and then having to sort of build from scratch, if you like, and maybe that was a bit of a led to some of the downfall. So you've kind of got to be quite careful, because it can be amazing for short-term quality, but it's not great for long-term squad building. So where do you think the club's going to go in terms of, which market to go for?
I think we've started fairly positively with the recruitment. We've got we've got three players in, and then obviously Luke's re-signed and extended for 3 years, which is quite a long contract for us. But I think Harry Clifton, central midfielder from Grimsby, probably not as good as Matty Craig, but I think he definitely fills a spot there and can definitely handle himself in midfield. Joe Sabara, I don't know too much about him from Solihull Moors, in all honesty.
Well, can I interrupt you there? Because I've had a couple of little short videos from people who are knowledgeable about a couple of those signings you've just mentioned. So I've had a video earlier today from the excellent Tom Williams, who's obviously an EFL expert, and he follows some of the National League as well. Here's what he had to say about Joe Sabara. Bearing in mind, I did ask him at late notice, and he was at a festival, so the quality might not be perfect, but he made the effort. So thanks a lot, Tom.
Joe Sabara has signed for Doncaster Rovers. Brilliant addition for them. Really, really good midfielder. Plenty of goals, plenty of assists. Low centre of gravity, so I'm a big fan of his style of play. For Solihull, he had an okay 23-24, had a brilliant 22-23 in 23-24. Didn't get as many games to start with, but by the end of the season, he was a key player in their promotion push. Ended up pushing them to the playoffs. And was a key player in their playoff run. Almost got promotion at Wembley, so was also a leading player anyway. But heavily linked with Notts, would have been a player that I would have loved at Notts. The Doncaster, huge signing for Grant McCann, and should be a brilliant addition to League Two.
And while we're at it, I'm just going to bring in Adam Stander from the View from the Finders podcast. He offered his view on Harry Clifton.
Hello, Doncaster. I've even stuck a bit of red on for you, look, to make you feel at home. Anyway, Harry Clifton. He's somebody that almost divides the Grimsby Town fan base with opinion. There's people that are fairly upset that he's left. There's others that are quite pleased. And that's, I think, down to the technical side of his game and the effort and graft side. So technically, he can be deficient. You will have overhit crosses. You will have simple balls that are not played to feet that you think League Two footballers should be making that pass. However, you will also have a player that will absolutely run his socks off for your club. And as we all know, at times, especially at this level, sometimes that can make the difference. You can win the ball in positions just through sheer graft that goes on to be beneficial for your side. And I think the last 3 seasons have been very much up and down for Harry as well. The 21-22 campaign that ended up in our amazing playoff promotion, he was an integral part of that side, scoring 7 goals in the process. But I remember thinking at the time, this is his level though. Great National League player, he's doing fabulously well, but this is his level. If we do go up, which ultimately we did, this is when he'll struggle when we're back in the league. However, he didn't. The year after, the 22-23 campaign was arguably his best season for us. He scored 9 goals, including 2 over the 2 legs against Luton in our amazing cup run. And he ended up getting player of the season for us, and deservedly. He had a cracking campaign. However, last season, just when you think he's going to go from strength to strength, those technical deficiencies sort of caught up with him, and in what was a poor Grimsby side, he didn't have the best of seasons, leading to somebody on our podcast, View from the Finders, saying that he looks like a toddler chasing a balloon at times, which I thought was a little bit harsh, but summed up the season for him in some ways. So it's going to be an interesting one for you. On one hand, you've got a player that will give it everything. On the other hand, technically, is he going to be good enough? Hopefully for you, if you've got another side pushing for promotion, he will slot in around those better players and you'll see the best of Harry. Good luck for the upcoming season, apart from when you're at Blundell Park. Up the Mariners.
Thoughts on that then, Daniel?
I think you've got to take positives from both of those clips. I love the backdrop at the festival. By the way,
sounded good, didn't
it? But I think you're never going to get a finished article at League Two. If you've got a fantastic player, they'll be playing at a higher level. They won't stay at League Two for long. And I think as a football fan, first and foremost, I think you've got to want to see effort from your players. You're paying money. All you want to see is the lads on the pitch put 100% in, leave everything out there, and the result will be what it'll be. You're never going to win every game. We're not Manchester City, so you've got to take the defeats and the draws as part of the game. But what I can't forgive or what I can't accept is a defeat where you've just rolled over and had your bellies tickled. So to hear that, although he might be not quite there technically, he's going to put 100% in and put a shift in. That's enough for me. I think we've probably got enough quality in and around the team to kind of pull him along. And like you said, that he had a poor season in a poor Grimsby team. Sometimes if you're having a positive season and you've got players that are always wanting the ball and looking for the ball and being open to receive it, it brings the best out of players. So hopefully that energy and that work rate will kind of pull him on to a positive season for Harry at Doncaster.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way Grant McCann's sides play, it's always seemed to me that they want to keep he wants to keep the wide forwards high and wide, especially in initial build-up. So there is a big responsibility on the midfield three to cover a lot of ground, perhaps especially considering that if you were to, when you play Tom Anderson and Richard Wood simultaneously at centre half, they're going to need a lot of protection. So your midfield's going to have to do a lot of graft. So I guess the Clifton signing makes sense from that angle.
Yeah, it does indeed. Like you say, with Tom and Richard as a centre back pairing, they're not the quickest, but I think they're probably positionally they'll always be there or thereabouts in the right place to clear things up. But you do need that energy in front of them, and I think Owen Bailey provided that this season. Played 59 games, played something like 5,000 minutes, something like that this season, a ridiculous amount of minutes. So I think having somebody in who can kind of take that workload and that strain off him will be greatly appreciated, I'm sure, from Owen Bailey's point of view. But yeah, the points on Joe Sabara, again, it's all about energy in a Grant McCann team, and I think we were lacking that at the start of the season. Fitness. Grant's touched on it himself in press conferences just before the summer break, that he wasn't happy that it took a couple of months to kind of get up to fitness. He sent players away with a summer training plan, so I think he's expecting players to come back in pretty good nick at the start of the pre-season campaign. So yeah, I think they're doing a week or two warm weather training in Portugal, and then we're into it. So hopefully players are coming back in good shape, and we can start like we ended last season.
I think that's really important, that you don't go into the first day of pre-season where you're almost a bit bloated from your holidays, and you're sort of working from scratch. You want to be able to hit the cross country running from a good physical condition. So I think that's correct. I'm just curious though, Daniel. I've got a list of the players in their sort of positions in front of me. By my count, there's 8 central midfielders contract to the club for next season, even with Harrison Biggins going, because you've got Joe Sabara there, you've got Zane Westbrook, you've got Harry Clifton, you've got Jack DeGrucci, you've got Ben Close, you've got Owen Bailey, George Broadbent. I think that's 8 that I've counted, so I suppose that shows where things are a little bit. Do you think that there's going to be a likelihood of 1 or 2 being offloaded or loaned out?
Yeah, I think the name that jumps out there that will struggle to break into the team would probably be Jack DeGrucci. He only played a handful of minutes last season. Even when we were riddled with injuries, he struggled to break in. So I think he's a little way off being ready for first team football. So I think he'd be the one which we'd probably see go out to maybe a National League North side or something like that to start kind of cutting his teeth and get bullied about a little bit, and just get used to playing men's football, I think. So yeah, he'd probably be the one that I'd be expecting to see go out on loan, if not go completely.
Nevertheless, though, it's a lot of competition. I mean, you could look at it as a really good thing, because you've got sort of 6 or 7 players there that would be expecting to give themselves a chance of playing regularly. So that could be great from a competition point of view. But then also there will be players who will be out on the sidelines when they are fit, hopefully, that maybe wouldn't want to be.
Yeah, I think as a footballer, I think they've got to accept that they've got to train well and perform well on a Saturday. And I think probably in the back of Grant's mind is the injuries that we had this season and the lack of cover that we had as well. So Zane Westbrook and Ben Close, they've had their injury problems. I kind of see them as one player, and he'll just kind of use them sparingly and kind of
Zane Close.
yeah, and it'll be one or the other, and maybe that conversation's been had behind closed doors, and they accept that. So although it looks like a lot of players, I think he'll be planning to kind of use them in certain situations.
That makes a lot of sense. I wanted to talk to you about Jamie Sterry, Daniel, because he seemed to be one of those players that made a real impact on his return. And I almost felt like it was a little bit like 2 players coming in one, because not only did you have Jamie Sterry in that he's one of the best right backs in League One, in League Two even, in and of himself, but also you bring into the equation his relationship with Luke Molyneux. I think I've talked to you about this before, that the way they sort of forged a relationship at Hartlepool under Graham Lee a couple of seasons ago. So it felt like a bit of a double whammy, him coming back, and that's got to be an area that you've got to be really excited about for next season as an area of real strength.
Yeah, it's just hoping, like you've just said, it's hoping that they stay fit and we don't get the same situation that we were in this season. Because, like you say, when he was in the squad, we looked so much better. There was an outlet there. There was one goal. He pinged the ball 70, 80 yards. It was a ridiculous pass. I think it might have been through to Adelaide, possibly, and it's just managed to slot it past the keeper. But the vision that he's got and the ability to find a ball is second to none. And like you say, that relationship on the right hand side with Molyneux does open up defences. So it's a good asset to have. But my worry is, again, can be quite injury prone, and at the minute we've not got a second right back, as far as I'm aware.
Well, Harry Clifton might be able to fill in there. I mean, he's certainly got Jamie Sterry's athleticism and ability to cover ground, lots of ground quickly. Is there a possibility that with the volume of competition in midfield, that Harry Clifton might be used to cover in some of the fullback areas this season?
Yeah, possibly. If he's got that versatility in him, I think. Yeah, I just thought he was
he has played in different positions before.
Yeah, if he can slot in there, then that's probably another reason why we have, like I say, we've got that kind of the number that we've got in the centre of midfield. So you've got Zane Close or Ben Westbrook, and then Harry Clifton filling in at right back if Sterry's not quite 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the right forward position is really interesting because Luke Molyneux was so impressive in the second half of last season, and I love his ability to sort of drift in field and curl shots at goal and create, and he really came alive in that, certainly last quarter of the campaign. But it's difficult to recruit someone to sort of compete with Luke Molyneux, because Luke Molyneux does look like a potential star player this season. You almost, if you're someone that really wants to get minutes this season or regular starts, it's going to be difficult to attract them. So I'm wondering, is this where Kalea possibly comes into the equation? Because he's been around the club for a couple of years now.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Gabe. As a footballer wanting minutes, you don't want to come into a club as an understudy, knowing full well that you're going to have to hope for an injury or a poor run of form for a colleague. Ultimately, I'd like to think every player that comes into any club wants the best for the club that they're going into, not just Doncaster but across the EFL. You want to kind of contribute to the success of the club, but at the same time you don't want to wish ill on a player so that you get that opportunity. You want the best for the team. I thought Jordan Gibson might have been kind of the man to slot in on the right hand side, but
I think he's too good to bring him in as backup, Daniel.
Yeah, I agree. And I think knowing that Adelaide's now not signed for us, I think Jordan's he's going to be on the left hand side and cutting in on his right foot, a little bit like Molyneux on the right hand side, cutting in onto his left. So I do think you're right. I think Kalea's got a really good opportunity now to knuckle down and show what he's about, and kind of be that bit part player, but be available if needed. And yeah, it's a really good opportunity for him to take if he wants it. It's all about, it's down to the individual, isn't it? And I think you're spot on in terms of bringing somebody in with that role. I don't think we'd get anybody good enough who's willing to be a bench warmer if they're wanting minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you about Carl Hurst, actually. Do you see a future for him this season?
He has got bags and bags of potential. He's a very, very good player. He was one of our better players in a poor Doncaster Rovers team 2 seasons ago. It looked a little bit lightweight this season. When he came on, I don't know if I had higher expectations of him from the previous season and expected a little bit more. But it just seemed a little bit lightweight, getting pushed off the ball a little bit too much. What I'm hoping for is that he's not kind of got somebody in his ear and is believing his own hype. I think if you've got potential, you still need to put that hard work in. And you see it so often, not just at Donny, but across the Football League. There'll be a player that everybody rants and raves about, and then they start believing that hype, they stop putting the effort in, and then you never hear of them. I'm hoping Kyle Hurst is not one of those players, because he really has got ability and potential to be a very, very good player, and hopefully Grant McCann can get that out of him, keep his feet on the ground, and we've got a really good player in Kyle Hurst.
Yeah, well, I think the wide forward areas look interesting with Jordan Gibson coming in, because I think Gibson can play on either side, so that will definitely help in terms of competition for Molyneux, but also giving yourselves an option on the left. But then there is that chance that if Kyle Hurst has a really good pre-season, then he can come into the equation as well. So I think that looks reasonably strong, if not quite as sort of padded out as maybe the midfield positions. But I wanted to talk to you about the kind of the glue of the attack, really, which is Joe Ironside. And he had a really big season last year.
He did. He was one of our better players, 24 goals, 7 assists. I think he's the first player to get over 20 goals since John Marquis. So, very, very, very good striker. And in all honesty, I prefer him to John Marquis. I think they're very, very similar in ways, in terms of kind of being a target man, getting other players involved. And
I think Ironside's better in the air.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And what I would say is, watching Marquis, you could see the frustration building up when things weren't quite going his way. Ironside just seemed to enjoy getting knocked around. He enjoyed the battle. Toys never got thrown out of the pram. He just kind of brushed it off and carried on. And I think he got a lot of credit from the fans for doing that, and just kind of doing his job, sticking to tasks that was at hand, and just performing to the best of his ability every game that he played. So really good signing last season, and I think 24 goals, 7 assists from a striker. You can't really ask much more than that.
Yeah, do you know what, Dan? Normally when a striker is so selfless and so good at creating space for other players through their industry, often it means that they don't actually get that many goals themselves, or they get 10 goals rather than 20 in the league. But for Ironside to get 20 and to do that amount of graft that he got through, I think is super impressive. And listen, well done to him, because I know he had a couple of great seasons for Cambridge United under Mark Bonner, but actually his final season at Cambridge, I was actually a little bit disappointed with him. So I think he's back with a bang in League Two, and hopefully he can have another really big season next year and get his career back on the right path. Yeah, absolutely. But I think the other sort of the backup centre forward options is an area that I'm quite curious about as well, Daniel, because George Miller obviously was hit by a long-term injury last season. I don't suppose you've got any idea what the timescale is for his return. Do you reckon we might be seeing him in pre-season at all? Or
I'm sure I read or heard somewhere that he was out until January.
Okay.
And then he showed up in the playoffs, and he was on the bench and he came on. So I'm not sure what's happened, but I'm assuming that he's back on the grass and training.
Have they moved the playoffs to January?
I might have dreamt it. I don't know. I'm sure I've read or heard somewhere that it was until January, because I thought that's a long time for him to be out. And I'm sure I remember looking at his contract and thinking he's out of contract in like that summer as well. So but to see him come back in the playoffs, and he put his penalty away. It wasn't the greatest penalty, but to see him back on the pitch, I think that's a real good positive, and hopefully a good summer, good pre-season, and we've got another good option off of the bench, or even as a starter to give Joe a bit of a rest.
Yeah, the other thing is, I think George Miller, what I really like about him is that he is very much a pressing forward, and I think that pressing is quite. To me, it's always seemed like pressing is a really important part of the way Grant McCann's sides play, and especially with giving a lot of freedom to the wide forwards, who are often the kind of the jewels in the crown in a Grant McCann side. You need your centre forwards to be really aggressive against the ball. So that's where I'm quite excited about George Miller. But I'm also, there's part of me a bit apprehensive about maybe putting too much expectation on him playing a regular part in the squad next season because of the sort of recent injury history. So how did Doncaster play this in the centre forward market? Do they go for another first team ready centre forward? Do they go for maybe a younger option to develop? So they could bring them in if Miller's gets injured again. But how do you think they're going to play it in the centre forward market?
I think we'll probably stick with what we've got at the minute. I'd be surprised to see another centre forward come in, because similar reasons to the difficulty of bringing a winger in to compete with Molyneux. I think you bring in a striker in to compete with Ironside and possibly Miller. So you get in that understudy role again. So I think you'd have to look at a younger player, but I think we've got a younger player that's got potentially shown glimpses of it in Goodman.
Okay.
So I think it's an opportunity a little bit like Kalea, where it could be in and around the squad and hopefully show what he's all about and maybe get opportunities in the EFL trophy if he takes those opportunities, kind of get into contention for maybe an appearance off the bench here or there. So I'd be very surprised to see us bring anybody in kind of in the forward positions from here on in.
Yeah, I've heard the name Goodman, but you'll forgive me, I've not actually seen an awful lot of him. I don't suppose you've seen glimpses. Can you give me a flavour of what sort of player he is?
Fairly low centre of gravity.
Okay.
It kind of reminds me of a bit of a rougher Alfie May. In terms of kind of chasing lost causes. He's full of energy. He's a young kid. I think he's 18, 19 years old. Like I say, loads of energy, just wants to get on the ball. He's had a couple of appearances. He's had a couple of shots at goal, fairly close with them. But yeah, it's kind of little glimpses of what he could be capable of. So again, it's one of those where if he knuckles down and puts the effort in, he could break through, but it's kind of on the fence at the minute.
Well, what I like from what you've described is that although neither Miller nor presumably Goodman would be able to replace Joe Ironside as a target man, I like that all three are incredibly industrious, so that if one it becomes unavailable, the next centre forward that you've got available will still be able to offer that aggression against the ball. Whereas if you had Joe Ironside, but the other two were sort of pure poachers who didn't do much against the ball, all of a sudden you've got a systematic issue where you've got someone who can't come in and do a similar job. So I like that sort of continuity that you've got up top. So I think that could be quite valuable. I don't think we've covered left back yet, Dan, and I wanted to talk to you about the impact James Maxwell had when he came into the side, because he's been described by most people as being rock solid, strong in the challenge, and capable of swinging on in the odd good cross for Ironside from deep.
Yeah, and that is James Maxwell to a T. I think he's a fantastic player. Again, a player that I believe we're lucky to have at League Two level. Could easily be playing his trade at League One. He gets up and down the wing, loads of energy, and I think we're kind of going over it with every position. It's a Grant McCann team. You need to be able to put the miles in, not the kilometres in games. It's literally you are running miles and miles every single game, and he's bringing the players in that have got the engines to do that. And Maxwell's certainly one of those that can do a job. And yeah, I think he's got a few assists last season. Obviously, another player that was on the treatment table at one point. I don't think there was a single player that didn't visit the treatment table last season. Probably Bailey. I think that's it. but yeah, really good left back, and a capable replacement in Jack Senior as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully Jack Senior can provide some competition for Maxwell, but I think it's fair to say you're pretty blessed in that position. I don't think we've quite touched, you mentioned Bailey there, and I don't think we've fully touched on him, because he's been talked about as a real model of consistency. There we go, if I can get my word right. But 17 of his 46 starts last season were at centre half, and I imagine next season you're going to be hoping to have enough cover at centre half or avoid injuries enough so that Owen Bailey can focus on doing what he does best, which is playing in midfield. Yeah,
I felt for him last season. It was definitely a square peg in round holes, but to be fair, he slotted in there pretty well. I know he wasn't on the greatest run of form when he was filling in kind of that patchwork squad that we were having to put together. But he put 100% in every game, regardless of where he was played. Just his character, his ability, his drive, determination, just everything about him. Sometimes you get players from the National League, and it's a bit of a risk, bit of a gamble to take them. I think this is a gamble that's definitely paid off. He's a very, very good player, and if Joe Sabara can kind of get anywhere near the levels that Owen Bailey's done this season, we've got another gem from non-league. I mean, I've got some stats. Last season, played 59 games, 5,266 minutes played, which is over 900 minutes more than the next closest player at Donny, which was Molyneux, on just over 4,000. So yeah, even though he was in different positions, it was incredible. For easily my player of the season last season, just through effort alone.
Well, that's certainly some praise. So yeah, well done to Owen Bailey, and hopefully more of the same next season, if of course he can keep hold of him.
Yeah,
yeah,
don't be saying that game.
Take that for granted, absolutely. Actually, do you mind me? I'd like to touch on George Broadbent as well, because he's been described previously in his sort of youth career as a bit of an old-fashioned 8 to kind of pass, tackle, run sort of thing. Get some shots away, quite a dynamic 8, if you like. Is that how you've seen him?
We've not seen a great deal of him, to be honest. Okay. And the bits that we have is kind of, it's going to sound really harsh. For me, he's gone unnoticed. I've not really noticed the impact that he's had on a game when he's come in. I don't know if that's just because we've seen him come off the bench and he's just not got up to the pace of the game as quickly as others. There's a player there. There definitely is a player in him. I just think he's struggled to kind of really find his place at the minute and get I think he needs a good run of games to see what he's really truly about. And I think with Biggins not signing the contract for an extension, I think he's got an opportunity now to really stake a claim for that first team spot, and hopefully we'll get to see what he says and what other people say that he is about in terms of receiving the ball, moving it on, running into spaces, getting shots off, and sit kind of in that Harrison Biggins mould. So yeah, it's a good opening for George to hopefully grasp, and we'll see the better side of him. For me, I'm not seeing enough of it in the time that he's been on the pitch.
Okay, well, hopefully he can lift his levels another gear next season. But I'm kind of curious. Appreciate, Dan, that you've not maybe seen an awful lot firsthand of Harry Clifton and Joe Sabara, and I would suggest that Sabara is probably, for me, the more exciting signing, because some of the clips I've seen of him suggests he's someone who can spin away from opponents. He's a good agile ball carrier, and he's a really advanced technician as well. But I'm kind of just trying to get it into my head, if you like, what Doncaster's best midfield three is going to be next season, presuming, of course, it is going to be a 4-3-3 of some description.
Yeah, I think I'd probably go. You can't not leave Bailey out of there. So I think he's going to be one of the first. For me, he's the first name on the team sheet.
Yeah.
And then obviously Harry, I've not seen much of Harry, but by the sounds of it, is full of energy, full of running, and like you say, that midfield three needs to do a lot of running to protect the back four, but also have that engine to get up and support the lone striker as well, and the wingers. So
yeah, I'm personally not convinced that Harry Clifton's quite technically at the level for a side that's expecting or aiming to challenge for the top three as a regular starter. I think Harry Clifton can be a useful squad player. I think he can fill in certain games, especially difficult away games. Or maybe if you play 4-2-3-1 with a number 10 that you're giving a lot of freedom to, he could maybe play on one of the wide positions, a bit like a Milner. I also think he could fill in as a wing back and in the full back areas. And his long distance running is absolutely incredible. So I think he's got a lot of strengths, but I think technically I don't think he's going to be quite at the level that you need. So, I mean, I'm looking at it. I think for me, Bailey and Sabara would be my definites. If I'm thinking the starting three-man midfield, but then I find it very difficult to kind of choose from the rest almost.
I think if you've got a fully fit Ben Close, he's got to go in there. But the problem is we've not had a fully fit Ben Close since we got into the
Would
club.
you have Close at the base of midfield and Bailey sort of to his right, would you say? Or
Yeah, probably, yeah. I think
okay.
like Ben Close as an anchor, and then Westbrook could come on in a similar position if Ben was blowing a little bit. But I think a fully fit Ben Close has probably got that technical ability that Harry's missing, but probably doesn't have the distance in his legs that Harry's got. So it's difficult. It's a good headache to have. I'm glad it's Grant McCann's, not mine.
Well, well, it certainly feels like a bit of a puzzle. Anyway, Doncaster fans, if you're watching, feel free to get into the comments, because I'll be really fascinated to hear what other Donny fans think about this. But it's it's a difficult one for me to get a handle on, so I'm really curious to see how it plays out. That's going to be a really sort of curious area for me for Doncaster.
I do think it will be a midfield three though. If I think that is the preferred formation and preferred shape. So I'd be surprised if it's not a midfield three. So like you say, it's just a bit of head scratching to find out who's in that midfield three.
Absolutely, yeah. So I want to talk to you a little bit about ownership, Dan, because I think I'm not Kieran Maguire. I don't have an incredible sort of detail, inch perfect idea of how clubs are run financially, but my understanding is Doncaster Rovers are in quite a lot of debt, and that's one of the things that sort of is a little bit of a red flag for me in terms of the overall trajectory of the club. Are you, as a Doncaster fan, concerned by some of the debt at all? Or
I'm not 100% sure how much debt we're in, and I'm not sure if it's to Terry Bramwell himself.
That's what I was wondering, because sometimes it's, if the debt's to the owner, sometimes it's not as big a deal.
Yeah,
if you're in the right
I believe it is. I think it's probably kind of loaned some money to the club, but generally we've been told as fans that we're self-sufficient as a club. We've got the Club Doncaster model, which utilises the stadium, the facilities that the stadium's got, and there's a number of different revenue streams that kind of come into one pot and then is distributed across Doncaster Rovers, the rugby, and the Bells. But the rugby have gone up to the Championship, so they were breaking even last season, so they're expected to do better than this season. The Bells break even with what they're doing. So I think the debt will have come from increasing a playing budget if that has been increased.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not too concerned with kind of administration or anything like that. I think there was times when David Blunt was in charge that things were getting missed, and I think tax wasn't being paid or something. There's been there are a number of winding up orders, but they've been quickly paid off and nothing's come of them. So I don't know if it's just been kind of a bit of shuffling. We maybe got behind on certain things, but by the looks of things, the club's getting back on top of those as far as we're aware. But you never know what's happening behind closed doors, do you?
Of course, yeah, and it's a lot of it's sort of almost guesswork, and you don't want to sort of speculate too much. But hopefully, the club can stabilise financially. Where are you on Gavin Baldwin, Dan? Because he's someone who's maybe divided opinion a little bit in the past. Do you have faith in him as chief executive?
I do, yeah. I've spoke to Gav quite a bit. I'm on the shadow board at Doncaster, so we try and kind of put questions to the club to make sure that it is being run right, and that there will be a club long after we're gone as fans, and the next generation have still got a club to support. We can't really impact anything that happens on the pitch. We can't impact signings, positions, tactics, or anything like that. It's more kind of decisions that the club are making, and he always seems to have the club's best interests at heart. I think he divides opinions because he's been gifted shares within the club, but I think without him and the work that he's put in, especially over COVID and more recent years, I think we'd see a lot worse position and a lot worse picture than what we've seen in recent years if he wasn't here kind of doing the work that he is doing. Puts a lot of effort in, a lot of hours, and like I say, the Club Doncaster model, although that divides opinion and splits the fan base a little bit, I think ultimately he's brought in work and give us a platform and a foundation to get a budget. And without that, yeah, you might have had somebody else in charge who was willing to pile money at it. Unfortunately, our owners weren't willing to chuck money at it at that time, so we had to find revenue and income streams from different means, sponsorship, renting out office space, whatever it is. And Gavin kind of spearheaded that. So yeah, I think without him, we'd be talking about a very different picture.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then I wanted to come to the structure at Doncaster Rovers, and I suppose the injury situation is one that I'm quite curious about, because a couple of seasons ago, I think I want to say it was the relegation season from League One, the club had a lot of injuries and appointed subsequently Sam Bowring as head of sports science. Now, I'm not going to sort of rush to the conclusion that Doncaster had a lot of injuries last season, therefore it's the sports science department's fault. But I am kind of curious, do you have a steer on how many of the injuries you had last season were contact injuries or sort of in-house injuries? Or contact injuries or in-house injuries, should I say?
I'm not sure on numbers,
right.
But as far as I'm aware, quite a few of them were just kind of from knocks in training, knocks during games, bad challenges and things. I think we've had a few misdiagnoses in terms of saying it was a certain injury and like the time it'd take for recovery. But as far as I'm aware, the club have done a massive investigation, and I think all EFL clubs go to the same clinic for any sort of operations and things. And I think it's all to do with the insurance that every EFL club has to take out. I'm not sure if I'm 100% with that. There may be different clinics. It's just kind of bits from each kind of conversation that I've had. But yeah, I think each club's physio will kind of give an overview of what they believe it is. But then if they need specialist treatment, they'll go to this clinic. I'm not sure where it is, and then the doctors there will kind of diagnose fully. Right. I don't think we've kind of had the right treatment with some players, but as far as I'm aware, the club have investigated it and they're quite happy with the direction that we're going in now. And towards the end of the season, the injury list was much better. Yeah. So I think they've got the finger on the pulse, and hopefully it stays there, and we see the back end of injuries. You're always going to get injuries as a football club, but I think at one point last season we had 16, and you take that number out of any club of any division across any country in the world, and you're going to struggle.
Yeah, certainly are. So I think it's great that the club are sort of very proactive with looking for solutions in that. So yeah, hopefully some progress can be made, and that number will drop a little bit next season.
So.
Let's hope so. I wanted to talk to you about James Coppinger as head of recruitment, because he's had a couple of years in the post now. So probably a decent point at which to kind of take stock of the work that he's done. Obviously already a very popular figure at Doncaster Rovers. How do you feel he's kind of settled into that role?
I think we've probably hit more than missed on recruitment over the last couple of years. There's not really been any standout flop in my opinion. I think we've had, like I say, we've achieved kind of decent results with the recruitment, but ultimately you're only as good as what budget you've got. And I think up until maybe last season, I don't think the budget was quite as good as was made out publicly. So if you're sent to a shop with a tenner rather than £100, you're gonna get less, aren't you? you literally got a shot with you to your means. So I think in terms of the job that Cops has done, he's got a team around him. The manager will have a list of players that they want as well, and I think the proof will be in the pudding with the recruitment this summer, adding to the squad that we've got from last year as well. I think you look at Ironside, Bailey. They're just two players that were brought in last summer. slotted into the team and were two of the best players last season. Hopefully, Sabara, Clifton, Gibson will be three key players this season, and the recruitment's a positive one again.
Let's hope that's the case. Grant McCann as well. Again, I think we've sort of talked about how good a job he's done, especially through such testing circumstances, and definitely some of the football he played in the last quarter of the campaign has got me as excited about, from a sort of neutral perspective, as excited about a Doncaster Rovers team since Grant McCann was last in charge. So I guess it must be almost entirely positive in terms of reviewing the manager.
Yeah, it's nice, Gabe, to finish a season and not be glad that it's over, and to be finished a season. It's refreshing to be looking forward to next season already. I mean, the Euros start on Friday. I'm not even bothered. I just get us into the season. I just want EFL football back. But it was heartbreaking to lose on penalties, especially the position that we're in the playoffs as well. We gate crashed it, and I think full credit has got to go to Grant McCann in terms of how he's kept the squad together. There were times in the season where fans turned on the players, never turned on Grant McCann, and I think that shows that the trust is there with him. And as long as he's got the squad around him that will give him absolutely everything, we'll have positive seasons under Grant McCann, and hopefully it is multiple seasons. Hopefully it's not headhunted, but that's football, isn't it? You do well at this level and you'll not stay at this level long.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, you want it to be that way around. I know it's been frustrating for Doncaster fans having Grant McCann poached by Hull and Darren Moore poached by Sheffield Wednesday, but you want to be the club that is getting things right enough so that the managers are leaving because they've been poached and because they've done well, as opposed to having to sack managers. I think it's much better that way round. So I've got, three questions just to finish off, Dan. First of all, I know it's very, very early to look too much ahead to next season, because so much can change and there's a lot that can happen in terms of the transfer window. But what right now would be the main reasons for optimism that Doncaster Rovers can achieve their ambitions, which I imagine would be a serious challenge for automatic promotion?
I think the main man, Grant McCann, and the way that he looked after the defeat in the playoffs, he just looked so beaten. But at the same time, he looked determined. And the press conferences that followed that, I remember what he said about a conversation with the players, and it was a case of go away, lick your wounds, talk to your agents. If you want to come back and fight for promotion, come back. If that's not for you, don't come back. And if that's the attitude that he's putting into the players and the drive and the determination that he's expecting, then hopefully that has a positive influence on the squad, and we're all pulling in the same direction. So I think that's the main cause for optimism, that we've got somebody there that is as hungry as he's ever been to succeed. And if you've got that driving force at the top, then it's only got to be positive for the squad. And if he's wanting standards, and those standards were there this season and he's now wanting them there, then yeah, it's got to be top three. But League Two is a very difficult division. It doesn't matter who's in there. I know Bromley's come up and they'll probably be everybody's favourites to go back down, but you never know at League Two. At any level in the EFL, if you've got to earn your victories. You've got to earn every single point. There's not an easy game. So I think we've got to have the right attitude, and hopefully Grant McCann can get that into the squad. And yeah, good start, a little bit of consistency that we didn't have last season. And I'm not too fussed about doing 10 wins in a row again. Just don't Don't
Just,
lose,
just a
we'll
win
win
and then
one.
a draw all season would do nicely, won't it?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Let's flip that then, Dan, and give me a reason for why you'd be maybe a little bit apprehensive about whether you'll meet your ambitions next season. And I suppose the obvious one would be, can you replace those key loanees?
yeah. You're victims of your own success. Sometimes I think we've mentioned it about being at this level, and if you're consistent or if you're half decent at this level, there's potential that clubs higher up the pecking order will come asking, and I'll never begrudge anybody, especially in football. It's a short career. If League One clubs come in during the transfer window and offer somebody twice as much to do the same job, I'd certainly move my location to earn twice as much money to do the same job. So I think that's probably the only concern coming into this, that you like not only just the three loanees in Low Tatala, Adelaide and Matty Craig. We've got to keep hold of Maxwell, Bailey, Sterry, Ironside. Yeah. There's players within that squad at the minute where I hope that core squad's still there at the start of the season and beyond the transfer window. But there's always chance that somebody's going to come in and offer something that's probably too good to be true, or too good to turn down, should I say, especially at our level. So, yeah, if anybody's watching, our squad is very, very poor. You don't want to look at it.
Absolutely. And then just finally, can you give me a number out of 10? I'm not going to ask you for a prediction because I think it's far too early for 10th of June to make predictions, but give me a number out of 10 for how optimistic you're feeling for next season as things stand right now.
I think you've got to go a solid 8. Yeah, I think with the end that we had to the season, 3 players and Molyneux extending, a couple more additions, and I think we've got the makings of a competitive team. I just want to avoid the playoffs. I'm not bothered about. I know Grant's mentioned winning the league, and that's the aim. We're coming back to win it. I'm not bothered. If we
have
get
a repeat of the 02-03 conference season.
Yeah, I'd just take promotion. Just top 3 would do me. I hate the playoffs. I know we've normally had we've won the playoffs, but we've also been knocked out in the semi-finals a couple of times as well. So kind of hit and miss with our playoffs. But yeah, it's such a lottery. You could look at MK Dons. They were 4th best team last year and just didn't turn up in the semi-final. So yeah, I'm fairly confident that we're going to have a positive season, but it's down to those guys on the pitch, isn't it? If they want it as much as the team that they're facing, and that's all you can do. Just put the effort in, and hopefully be rewarded for those efforts.
Wise words. Daniel, thank you so much for your time. Everyone go check out 18Dapper on YouTube for some fantastic Doncaster Rovers and EFL content. Thanks to you for watching at home. And I guess I'll see you again next time on the Summer Deep Dives.